Well, welcome everybody. My name is Laura Frankie. I'm the Sustainable Buildings Coordinator here at HDC, and we are very excited to have a conversation today with folks representing RainCity Partnerships today. So without further ado, Ellen, I'll go to mute and let you take over.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I will be quick. I'm Ellen Southard with Site Story, and we consult to the RainCity Partnership. Um, and I apologize, there's some construction at my place. I hope that that's not super loud. Um, but we're consultants, we're green building and community engagement consultants, and have been working with the RainCity Partnership for 2 years now. And in some of our other work, have worked with a number of affordable housing providers, as well as have participated alongside of Laura in some focus groups and hearing from affordable housing and supportive housing, mission-driven housing organizations around the obstacles and opportunities for treating stormwater on site. And we all know how challenging some of these budgets can be, especially with rising material costs, and just really difficult decisions that have to be made when you're building a housing project and or looking at retrofits and looking at refreshing your housing projects. We know that oftentimes stormwater strategies get value engineered out. And so one of the excitements I have about being here today is just that there's an opportunity with the RainCity Partnership and their work with Seattle Public Utilities to bring some solutions to the table for affordable housing projects, mission-driven housing, and supportive housing. We think it's a great program, and again, have been around the block for many years with a number of affordable housing projects, including HUD-funded projects, and working with Seattle Housing Authority. And so we're excited about this potential, thinking of it really to some extent as mini grants for improving your utility performance, but also just the genuine satisfaction and empowerment of community members to live in healthy spaces and to know that where they live is part of the solution to climate resilience and clean water in Puget Sound. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand things off to Jean Jensen, who's the project manager for community outreach and grant funding with the RainCity Partnership. She's a delight to work with, and we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions today. So thanks again to Housing Development Consortium for having us here to share out the opportunities that exist with this grant program.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen. And thank you, Laura, for the introduction. As Ellen said, my name is Jean, and I've been leading a lot of the community outreach. Excited today to share more about our program, really just to help you understand how we can improve your property and also the communities in Seattle through this partnership. So I will get started. All right, let's see. Oh, is it? Let me go to my next slide here. All right. So as we mentioned, RainCity is a partnership between CIS and Seattle Public Utilities and you as well. Our program is on private property, so we really need the folks in Seattle who are interested in transforming their property with some free stormwater retrofits. This program offers fully funded green stormwater improvements. And so today we're going to spend some time just going over the program and also getting to know your organizations and talk through any questions or ideas you have for how we can work on your property. So why RainCity? Well, really, it's quite an innovative initiative with the goals of improving water quality and also building some climate resilience. So by actually building nature-based solutions, they can offer multiple benefits. Some of those benefits you may be familiar with, but I'll go ahead and include them here. There's neighborhood greening. There's also opportunities for community education at our sites through signage and through some events that we're going to be doing. Also through cisterns and detention vaults, you're able to harvest rainwater and reuse it for landscaping and other purposes. We also like to do quite a bit of community placemaking and placekeeping through our projects, especially the ones that we work closely with community to develop. We have a mentorship program through RainCity, so we're also working on workforce development and hiring people from my priority zip codes. I'll get more into that later. And all of this really to help take some pressure off of the current sewer system and reduce localized flooding as much as we can. Okay, let's see, shared solutions. Here we go. So here are the RainCity deliverables. So this is essentially what our program hopes to deliver. The biggest goal here is this 25 acres of impervious area. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. This also includes 1 acre of restored riparian area. So if you have any properties along a river, that's also an interesting thing to consider. So please send those our way. We also have quite a few social impact goals. So 10 of the projects that we do are going to be community driven. What that means is that the community either source the project, they help do engagement for the project, maybe they lead design, construction, or maintenance. And so that's one way that we actually try and give some power back to the community in their project development. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have a mentorship program for different entities that actually want to learn how they can grow their business in the green stormwater infrastructure space. So through this program, we will mentor 12 community organizations and businesses. We're in our first year of our mentorship cohort, and we are gearing up for our second year. So if there's any interest in the mentorship program, I'm happy to share more about that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our workforce development goals. So 28% of the contracted work for our program, we want to go to women and minority-based enterprises. So that we actually are currently at, I think, about 48%. So we have a pretty high amount going toward women and minority business enterprises. And then also 40% of the hours for our program, we want to actually go to residents and businesses that are in the priority zip codes. These have been identified by the city of Seattle as economically depressed areas that need more stimulation. So that's why we are targeting them for our hiring. And why does this matter really for you? Why does your property matter? Well, heavy rainfall is something we already experience here, and it's expected to become more persistent, more frequent, and heavier storms. And this can lead to some drainage issues. So our current conventional system becomes quite overloaded during storms, which can lead to the combined sewer overflows, and it really just leads to a lot of pollution entering our waterways. But by using green stormwater infrastructure, which actually is a natural solution, it actually mimics nature and allows for water to slow down, seep into the groundwater, and really prevents some of that water from going into the sewer system so that we can protect our waterways, preventing pollution from entering our precious ecosystem in our aquatic areas and marine habitats. And this is a bit more about how this actually works. So the eligibility for our program is defined as, it has to be within the city limits of Seattle. It also needs to be a privately owned area that was developed prior to 2021. And the reason for that is because that's when the stormwater code was updated. So we're hoping to retrofit buildings that were actually developed prior to the new stormwater codes. We also are targeting or eligible as non-single family use homes, so apartments, even commercial buildings, warehouses, anything that is non-single family use. The reason being that there is a RainWise program also through Seattle Public Utilities that is specific for single family use. So if you are curious about that, I'm happy to send more information. We also have some equity and social justice goals for this program. So the property has to be located within either tier 1 or tier 2 of the city of Seattle's racial and social justice equity map. And then some of the other technical requirements really that are site specific are the 5,000 square feet of contributing impervious area. An impervious area is really just like concrete, cement, things that don't allow water to flow through them. It has to be in an area of known drainage and wastewater need, which is actually a lot of Seattle. So your property is likely in that. And also similar to this, connected to the combined and separated sewer system. That one is also, most areas are. So unless you're on a septic system, that would probably be the only reason you wouldn't be eligible for that reason. And then also areas that have no known contamination, at least for projects that would actually infiltrate the groundwater or the rainwater into the ground. There is an exception to this that we could actually do water storage for sites that do have contamination on site. So we can do some workarounds for that. Yeah, these are our general eligibility requirements. I actually have an eligibility map that I can pretty quickly check eligibility of properties too. So if folks want to just check to see if they have eligible properties, you can send me an email and I'll have that on my last slide so that you can actually send those to me and I can very quickly let you know which ones are eligible and get them started in our process. All right, and that's just a little zoom in of the map. You can see here some of the green areas are the ones that have more eligibility, but I have an easier map to review, so I'm happy to go over that with anyone interested. Then I just wanted to share a little bit about our first community-driven project, just to give you guys a bit of an example of the type of work that we're going to be doing. So this is Cherry Street Village. It's located in the Central District in Seattle. And it is our first community-driven project. We are actually having some of the folks that work and volunteer at Cherry Street lead some of the outreach and engagement for this project, along with Site Story. Site Story will also be a part of this project. This is a historic building, and it actually has a very interesting story, how it was the first Islamic school in Seattle. And now it's actually been sort of re-envisioned to be a multi-denominational, multi-use space for a lot of different community groups. So it really is a community serving building. But this building was actually suffering from quite a bit of flood and drainage damage. The water from the parking lot was actually pooling against the side of their building, causing issues with the foundation and leaking. So our project will actually be able to reroute all the water that has been damaging the building into where it's actually going to be a lined bioretention pond. The reason being is that there is contamination in soil, so we're going to have to work around that. And then using a combination of cisterns and a detention vault to actually store a lot of the water coming from the parking lot and from the roof. And then that water will slowly be re-released back into the city sewer system. But by slowing down the flow of that water and allowing it to be, withheld during storm events, it will take a lot of the pressure off the sewer system. In addition to the stormwater solutions, we're also providing what we call the community amenities. So for a lot of our community-driven projects, we like to add another amenity. So for this case, it's going to be some raised garden beds and a covered picnic area. And that's been a goal of Cherry Street Village for a long time, to have a functioning community garden that is open to the public, where people can actually grow and harvest culturally relevant foods, and just have an opportunity to build community in the garden together. So, and let's see, just to kind of give you a bit of an example of sort of what we mean when we say bioretention, just in case you aren't familiar with those terms. All it really is just like essentially a constructed little rain garden area with ways for the water to actually get in here. So it's able to infiltrate the stormwater into the ground after it goes through some layers of soil and goes through some plants. The soil and plants can actually help to filter out some of the pollutants that are entering in it. And then it actually can either, sometimes if let's say this overflows, there's usually a little bioswale that can take some of that water back to the sewer system, but the rest of it will actually go into the groundwater. So Like I said, it mimics a natural system because before there was pavement in Seattle, this is how a lot of the water was actually just absorbed back into the ground and then was eventually ended up in our streams and ocean. So. And then a bit more about cisterns, as I mentioned those for Cherry Street. It's really just to capture a lot of that roof water. So often the water that collects in your gutters and then either is connected to the sewer system, you can actually collect some of that. And what's nice is you can then reuse that water to water your gardens and other areas. And it's essentially a form of gray water that you can reuse. I wanted to provide also a few other examples of projects that we've done throughout the nation. So we have a program in Milwaukee, and we worked with a group called the WellPoint Care Network. It's a nonprofit organization that's been caring for Milwaukee children and family for over 175 years, and they're a leader in the trauma-informed care. So they provide a lot of human services, up to 5,000 individuals daily. And they provide mental health, child and family care, training and consultations for trauma-informed care, as well as education and housing services. And so we partnered with them starting in, I think, 2022. And we helped them transform this 18-acre site into a vibrant neighborhood anchor with the goal of improving the water quality while also reducing flooding that they were experiencing on site. So as you can see, there's a constructed wetland. This is just a rendering. This area has been planted, but the plants have yet to grow in yet. So, but more pictures to come. But yeah, so this is a constructed wetland, and there's also a system of bioswales that have been built around this as well. In addition to the stormwater solution, there was a community garden as well as a peace garden and some walking paths that we were able to build just to make this site a bit more cohesive with the community benefits that they provide. Another example from Milwaukee is actually at the Harley-Davidson headquarters. We were able to transform their parking lot into this multi-use neighborhood amenity. This was developed also through the Fresh Coast Protection Partnership that we have with Milwaukee, their sewer district, and CIS. So this project was very exciting because it has, the big Harley-Davidson name, but this site was actually developed so that they can still have motorcycle parking. So this is all permeable pavement around here with the system of bioswales that are interconnected. And each of these little tiles is actually a parking spot for some of those Harley-Davidson bikes that park there. So there's some really cool opportunities for them to take pictures of all the bikes lined up. And this is nearly 1 acre of impervious area that was removed. And there's also a playground that was installed over here on this side, just out of the frame of the picture. But yeah, this is a really exciting one. And then another example is the Mod Playfield in Milwaukee. This one has 2 bioswales. It also has permeable pavers and underground storage. And this one captures about 86,000 gallons per year. So yeah, that's a bit more about our program and the different project sites that we have. Now we have a bit of time for some Q&A, so we can kind of get more into the nuts and bolts. I think I'm going to end my slideshow and stop sharing just so I can look at everyone. Let me see here. All right. All right, is there any questions folks have or want to talk about in more detail from my presentation, or anything I can go back over?
Jean, I'm curious if the city equity map is a link you could drop into the chat, maybe?
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks. I'm just going to keep asking questions. So the other thing I'm curious about is I remember one of the other presentations that you gave, there was a discussion about the the use of oyster shells. And I'm wondering if maybe you can talk a little bit about that and if that would be something that would potentially factor into this opportunity.
I think that was actually one of Ellen's sites. She had some cool oyster shells. Yeah, we definitely are open to innovative green stormwater infrastructure ideas, especially the things that we can reuse that are already in our area. We actually tailor each design very specific to the site. And so if there's a, property owner or a community group that is leading the design discussions that really wants to see a specific practice included, we can develop it with those ideas in mind. For example, we're working on a project at a very large warehouse type facility. It's like 4 acre, well, it's an 8 acre building, but 4 of it we're going to be treating the stormwater on. And what they've wanted to include is actually some planter boxes that have, some beautiful greenery on top, but then they have a storage below it so that some of the stormwater can actually be stored there, as well as including some green stormwater infrastructure bioretention ponds in the back of the building. What's interesting about those too is that there's actually these kind of strange, like I think they're like fire posts. They're what the fire department would connect to if there was a fire, but they're just these big posts that they need cinder blocks around, or like these big concrete blocks so that people don't run over them because trucks are going here and there. So we're actually, instead of having these giant cinder blocks that are a bit of an eyesore, we're going to be doing like a little planted area around those as well. So there's a lot of fun ways we can incorporate the design of the building and the needs of the building with some natural systems and with green stormwater infrastructure. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just build off that, Laura. The oyster barrels that you saw were designed to fit into a really tight space. And I think that that's one of the elements to consider where limited space is concerned, is that CIS and its team, I mean, we just have a lot of tools in our tool chest in terms of different site constraints and opportunities. And so, I think a lot of people think, well, we don't have any land for bioswales or rain gardens. But there's a lot of new solutions in terms of underground green stormwater infrastructure, bioretention cells, or above ground in terms of what's called a Gradix box or an oyster barrel. So part of the process with RainCity and Seattle Public Utilities is to look at all the options, see what's available, and then present those options to the landowner and to the communities. And I will say that we have a number of affordable housing projects, existing sites that are under consideration and going through the city's review process now. So although we don't have an affordable housing site to immediately show under the RainCity Partnership, we definitely have a number of sites under consideration that are going through review, and our team will come back and provide those recommendations of what is the most logical approach. And we know that maintenance is always of concern. And so one of the beauties of this program is that the RainCity Partnership and the way CIS works is they're on board for the first couple years of maintenance. And then they work with local funders and grant giving organizations to help backlog maintenance funding as well. So they're definitely on board for a longer period of time than just the installation. And I think that's a really important aspect of the project, is there's a lot of assistance for the maintenance and facilities teams. It's not a one and done, built and walk away type program. It's really a program that's focused on support and learning and success. So if they're going to install a GSI project and a strategy, they're going to be on board to help for the long-term maintenance and care of that facility. We're also seeing a lot more funding streams for that maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
GSI is becoming more prevalent as a solution, and helps reduce some of the infrastructure costs for the city and the county. Especially with mission-driven organizations like affordable housing providers, there's just a lot more opportunity now, despite where we're at, from a federal funding perspective. There is support at a regional level to help maintain these projects for the long term.
Any questions from anyone else? I put my email in the chat too, so if folks want to send me any addresses that they want me to check, that would be great. Happy to look through those and provide really quick answers of whether it's eligible and more information on the process. I'm also happy to go over the process in more detail, because that's sometimes helpful for folks as well.
I was actually just going to ask you that, Jen,
Sure.
or Jean, I'm sorry, is, you know, it sounds like the process is very specific to the site. Can you talk a little bit about, once you know that it's qualified, what does the next step and timeline look like to kind of move things along?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, so once we establish that a site is eligible, we do something that we call a desktop analysis, which is mostly just pulling all available public data on that site, and then confirming who the property owner is, trying to make a connection with the property owner just to confirm that there's interest in the program. And then I, am able to schedule a site visit often is the next step. So, and that can, be dependent on the availability of the property owner and the community groups that are playing a part in that. So, I just went on a few site visits last week, for example, and property owners are welcome to include the community groups that they want involved in that as well. And often I just look around the site and we talk through sort of what they're envisioning. If there's additional community amenity that folks want, whether that's shade or maybe it's a covered seating area, maybe it's a community garden, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's even just a public mural, an art piece that can be on site for them. So we talk through those things and then I deliver that back to my team. And then we do what's called a feasibility analysis, which is essentially just taking all that information that we've gathered and actually having a design engineer team look through all the different options that are available for that site. And then once we have sort of all of those, options that have been vetted through an engineering team, we're able to meet back with the property owner and the other stakeholders involved and present to them on the different options available. And then from there, if they like those options and they want to move forward, we actually begin the design phase. So that's when we actually will start, figuring out where the utilities are on site, where we would connect, back to the sewer system if that's the case, or where exactly the rain garden could go or where a cistern could go. So that's when we really get into the more technical pieces. And then I would say design can move fairly quickly depending on the size of the site, but also can take a long time if it's a large, more complicated site. So that piece is dependent on the size of the site. But there's many opportunities for the property owner to provide input throughout the design process. So once we have what we call a conceptual design, we'll do a workshop with the property owner and any other community groups and any other experts that they want in the room. We actually were just with the Cherry Street folks. They have a group called Architects Without Borders that they're working with. So they're wanting to make sure that it's aligning with their other development goals as well. So they've been joining into conversations. So it can be a pretty collaborative process in that way. And ultimately, we want to make something that the property owner is excited about. So they have many opportunities for input. And at the end, they have to approve the final design. So once we are through the design, we can actually go into the implementation, which is the construction of the project. Sometimes, like I said, that can also take some time depending on what the installation is, but some can be very simple, like a cistern is pretty easy to put in, especially like a lot of areas in Seattle, there's not a ton of space around the building for a rain garden. So a cistern often can be placed underneath an awning or even in a basement where space is limited to actually capture some of the roof water there. So, and then once we're through construction phase, once the project's actually been built, we go into the maintenance. So as Ellen mentioned, CIS will actually pay for the first 3 years of maintenance for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure installation. And then the warranties on the project, as well as the maintenance responsibility, will transfer to the property owner. But we will connect them with everything they really need to maintain it. Some folks want to maintain it themselves because it's a simple maintenance process, and some might actually want to work with a local firm to do the maintenance on their installation. So that's a bit more about the process. Awesome. If folks have other questions, happy to answer any other questions.
That was super helpful. Yeah, if for those of you that are still on the line, please just unmute if you have any questions, or drop it in the chat. Either way is acceptable.
Mhm. But like I said, feel free to reach out via email because I'm available to chat further too if folks want to chat offline. But
Well, and I would just mention our team will be at the HDC Summer Social tomorrow night. So if folks have more questions or want to learn more about this program, we're going to be available in person. Just did want to add, there's Urban Land Institute has done a lot of research around GSI and its wellness potential for residents, as well as the economic benefits and appreciation of land. And so this really is a win-win. If you have a site that might be eligible, if you've been thinking about GSI and you weren't sure how to afford that, Jean's a great resource for thinking through this potential and opportunity, and sharing out, again, thinking, well, it gets beyond, there's more to it than stormwater. And so really, what are the benefits to your residents? What is the benefits to the neighborhood? And then again, how does your own property maintain its value and appreciate? And then with certain strategies, just saving money on energy, for instance, if you have a green roof, or lowering your utility costs through water conservation with a cistern. So there's a lot of opportunities to really look at this as the triple bottom line of sustainability. So the social, the environmental, and the financial aspects of this work.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, I'll give another moment for questions or any ideas folks want to discuss. But if everyone is happy, we can wrap up a little early today.
All right. Well, I guess hearing no more questions, we'll go ahead and give people back a little bit of their time this afternoon. Enjoy your lunch, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you to RainCity Partners, Ellen, Marin, and Jean for being here to share this important information with us. It really is an exciting opportunity. So I hope that this recording travels far and wide throughout Seattle, and you get some takers, because it's really exciting. So thank you all for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Laura.
Bye, everyone.